Hello, I'm Erin Palmer, Team Rayceen Productions co-host and moderator.
And I'm Tiffany Green-Williams, Team Rayceen co-host and moderator.
Joining us is Michael Brown. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, before we talk about your 2024 general election campaign as an independent candidate for DC Delegate, please tell the viewers a little more about yourself, your background, and who you are.
Gladly. And thank you, Tiffany, for having me as well. Well, first, I have on my Washington Commanders hoodie today because we're on Monday Night Football tonight, and we need all the luck we can get, considering my children have never seen my favorite football team good. So, of course, I remember greatness. They've never seen even good. So any good luck charm I can wear for tonight. I actually recently discovered that my children are fifth generation Washingtonians. I always knew I was a fourth generation Washingtonian, or third, sorry, and that my kids were fourth. But then we just discovered and found another great grandmother that was actually born on what is now called H Street. It wasn't H Street then. I don't think there was even a street name. But she was born in DC in 1879. So now my kids, and I told them this weekend that they're now fifth generation Washingtonians. They really didn't have a great response. But nonetheless, so I'm a fourth generation Washingtonian. Grew up in Shepherd Park. Went to Shepherd Elementary School before moving to Chevy Chase, DC. Went to Mackin Catholic High School, which is now Archbishop Carroll. This archdiocese merged a bunch of schools back in the 90s. So I guess I'm an alum of Mackin Catholic, but I now receive alumni mail from Archbishop Carroll. Went to undergrad outside of Boston. I went to Clark University, and then went to law school in Delaware. And coincidentally, when he was a senator, Senator Biden was my constitutional law professor. So I go back with Senator Biden now, obviously, then Vice President Biden, and now President Biden for several years. I worked in finance first, in municipal finance. The law firm I was in, we did municipal bonds, so we structured municipal debt. So I understand how municipalities are supposed to budget their money, account for it. And so I became more of a traditional lobbyist here in Washington on the federal side. So I've been working on Capitol Hill either as a staffer, worked for 3 different congresspeople. I was a page actually first when I was like 14 years old, 15. I was a congressional page. And then after being a staffer, went back to started law school, and then I mentioned was in finance, and then became a lobbyist. So I've probably been working either on or with Capitol Hill for 20 some odd years. I know the Hill very well. Then in the late 90s, early 2000s, when Marion Barry was mayor, he appointed me to the Boxing and Wrestling Commission. And I became the youngest appointee in the city's history. And the one task he had for me was to get more fights into DC itself, into DC proper. Because at the time, even though Washington, D.C. has a great fan base, a lot of the fights were being held at the Patriot Center at George Mason University. There was some place called the Showplace Arena in Prince George's County. Not a lot of fights were happening actually in D.C. Oh, and the Capitol Center, which was in Landover, Maryland at the time. So I guess it was pretty successful. We brought a bunch of fights here. I'm the person that either takes the credit or the blame for negotiating the Mike Tyson fight that was here in Washington, D.C. in 2000 and whatever that was, 2004, I think. But we made a bunch of money for the city, which was great, so it could go to wonderful programs. And then people started asking me if I was interested in running for office. I'd been doing stuff in the community for a long time, but I had never been on the other side. So we started some political campaigns. Fortunately enough for us, in 2008, we won the at-large race, which was previously held by Carol Schwartz, who had been on the council for, I think, 16 years, if I'm not mistaken. And then I got elected vice chair of the council I was elected in 2008, elected to vice chair of the council in 2010. And then after my 4 years were up, we were caught up in some political corruption issues back then. I think the Washington Post called it a culture of corruption at the time. Then came back and started doing stuff in the community again. And then as things started getting a little weird on Capitol Hill, when I say weird, I'm talking about the landscape of how Capitol Hill folks were treating the District of Columbia. In particular, members like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congresswoman Boebert, Chairman Comer, and other members. And there didn't seem to be a lot of pushback. And then so folks started calling me saying, hey, Michael, we need somebody that knows the Hill, knows how to fight. Because I used to go on Fox News all the time. I was the one Democrat that used to go on Fox and knows how to push back against that kind of propaganda, in particular about our city. So we decided to give it a shot. And so the election is on November 5th, and we'll see if we can make some headway.
Well, this is a good transition. So please tell our viewers a little bit more about the position for which you are running and why you want to be elected to that position.
Sure. So every jurisdiction in the United States has a congressional member. In our case, in the case of the Virgin Islands, Guam, and other United States territories, depending on your population size, you get a delegate, though it's a congressperson. So the delegate is in charge of obviously advancing the agenda of that particular jurisdiction, in our case, almost 800,000 people on Capitol Hill. Now, the District of Columbia does not have a vote on the House floor. We do have a voting committee, but not in the House floor. So it is very tough to what's called barter on the Hill if you don't have a vote to barter. So what we're trying to do is, I was chair of the Statehood Self-Determination Committee, is try to figure out a responsible, expectation-driven strategy that ultimately gets us to statehood, absolutely. But in the meantime, we need to get a vote on the House floor, get more autonomy, so some member of Congress from another part of the country can put crazy amendments on our budget that we pay for. Remember, historically, the District of Columbia had what's called a federal payment. So the federal government would essentially write DC a check so we could pay for ourselves to, survive. We don't need that anymore because of our own sales taxes, growing population, property taxes. We generate our own income we can pay for ourselves. However, our budget still goes to Capitol Hill. I hate even using the word, but approval for them to approve it. And how they approve it is they start putting these crazy amendments and riders on our budget for their own personal agenda, having nothing to do with DC. And I just think we can push back a little harder and frankly be more proactive in our defense of our city rather than always reactionary. So when folks do something to us, then we react rather than us being proactive to keep it from happening in the first place.
Thank you for that. I believe you just alluded to it just a little bit, but could you tell us more about what your top 3 issues are?
It's essentially when you say top 3, they're certainly not in order, but it's probably, 1A, 1B, 1C kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess statehood is always statehood, frankly, should be on every elected official's to-do list. So if we want to put that aside, because statehood is kind of the emeritus priority list, number 1. I think that the vote on the House floor is extremely important because it gives us the leverage to be able to make sure that our agenda is being met on Capitol Hill when it comes to particular bills, war and peace, tax policy, healthcare, reproductive rights, LGBT issues, you name it. We don't have a vote on the House floor when it comes to those particular issues. So House floor is important. And I guess 3, since folks at a meet and greet the other day, as a matter of fact, Tiffany, somebody said to me, well, Michael, you're almost like a 2-for-1 because you get help. I understand City Hall because I served there, and I understand Capitol Hill, so I can be an advocate both on and at the Wilson Building, City Hall, and on Capitol Hill for you. So crime is something we all should be caring about for a host of reasons. Everything from impact of different communities, hate crimes, making sure people that have come to this city want to stay here and raise their families here. We don't want them to come as a single couple, enjoy the bars and restaurants, and then the second they have a child, they leave because they want to have, whether it's better education options, whether it's less crime, less traffic, you name it. We have so much to do to make sure we can attract people here, but do they stay? So I think those are the three issues: 2, Capitol Hill related; 3, crime related, but that covers Capitol Hill and City Hall.
Well, you also spoke about this a little bit, but I'm wondering if you can elaborate on why you are the best choice for voters.
Well, for example, and I've run, and this is where the kind of dual experience helps. I've run for office on a local level, understand it. And when you're running on a local level, especially if you're not an incumbent, everything you're talking about is aspirational. Here's what I will do. Here's what I think I can do for the city, which is great. That's what politics are all about, is persuasion and trying to persuade people to support you. The Capitol Hill position, delegate, Congress, in the U.S. House of Representatives, is different. There's really no learning curve. You don't have that. You have that maybe on the local level, but Capitol Hill, you either understand the Hill or you don't. Now you can learn it. I'm not suggesting you can't, but relations take a long time to build. And I have relationships on Capitol Hill that go back a couple decades. And that helps, where I don't need a couple of weeks, a couple of months, a couple of years to figure out who's who, what's what, and how to build coalitions to get things done, because that's how it works. And so positioning, that's one side on the experience side. The other side is how to defend the district. And I don't even like using the word defend, because that means you're always on the defensive. That's what I mentioned earlier about being more proactive and more aggressive with our strategies, so we're on the offensive. I think for the last several years, we've been on the defensive. And the incumbent, who I deeply respect, and I think she's known me since I was like 10 years old. It's just, with this landscape on the Hill, we need to be more proactive and aggressive rather than reactionary. So couple it with the experience at both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue and the willingness to fight. And again, I got my training on Fox News, being a Democrat on there against Hannity and Bill O'Reilly and Laura Ingraham. I think I'm prepared on all three facets to be ready on day one to help represent the residents on Capitol Hill.
Very nice. So could you please tell us when voting begins?
Sure. Well, clearly, if you need the additional help, you can, in much more detail, you can go to dcboardofelections.org, and they will certainly, and it lays it all out. But the ballots are going to be mailed out. We just had ballot selection about a week ago. I'm number 3 on the ballot. The incumbent is number 4 on the ballot. There are 4 of us running, and of course, people can write in. So the mail-in ballots will be going out very soon. The reason I don't want to give you the specific date, because if I'm off one date or one day, I certainly don't want to get criticized. So they can get the actual on the Board of Elections website, and it'll lay it out, both early voting and where the precincts are closest to your house, mail-in ballots and the process for that. And then, of course, Election Day is November 5th.
Wonderful. Well, please tell our viewers how they can learn more about you and support your campaign.
Well, thank you for asking. I was hoping you would. Our website is michaelbrownforcongress.com, or you can go, if you're a technology person, I don't know if it'll show up on your screen, but we have a QR code right there. Again, I don't think it'll work on the when we're doing it this way, but nonetheless, michaelbrownforcongress.com. And if you see any of our signs around the city, we have the QR code on it. Take a picture of that, and it'll take you right to our website. And then also, if you have questions for me, you can leave them on the site, and I will answer them back.
Thank you so much. Viewers, please look in the description below for links. Thank you so much for spending time with us, Michael.
Thank you for having me. I hope I can earn your votes and your viewers' votes. I think we have this is a challenging election, both on the federal side, also on our literature and on our website. I have proudly endorsed Kamala Harris, the vice president for president. And obviously we want people to come out and vote for her. And then the next category down is the U.S. House of Representatives category, and I'm number 3. So after you vote for the vice president, feel free. Hopefully I can earn your vote and you'll vote for me on November 5th in the mail-in ballots and as well as early voting. And thank you again for having me.
Perfect. Thank you again. Goodbye.
To those watching, please follow Team Rayceen on social media and subscribe to this Team Rayceen YouTube channel.
And viewers, thank you for watching.